Bhajami radam aravinda netram smarami radam madhurashmitasya vadami radam kalyadaradram tato bhavanasti gatina chapi. I first of all offer millions and millions of Dandavat pranams unto the lotus feet of my most beloved Gurudev, Nitya Lila Pravishta Om Astom Tadasara Shishimad, Srila Bhativedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj. And the same again millions and millions of times unto the lotus feet of my beloved Nitya Lila Pravishta Om Astom Tadasara Shishimad, Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. And all the Vaishnavi devotees of the Lord, Dandavat pranams. So, we're continuing to explain the first verse of this Srimad Bhagavatam according to the explanations of Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. And he's given 5 explanations of the goal or the essence. What is our purpose in reading this Bhagavatam? So in the last 6 days I've tried to impart something of the Satyam Paramadimahi. What is the goal? Who is the goal? So initially we talked about the all-pervasive impersonal Brahman, that supreme, highest conception of reality, but in a nirgun form, without having a form. His qualities not directly focused upon. Just like that great personality, Prahlad Maharaj, when in his worship I described that Gurudev has said that Krishna could come in any form. He was worshipping the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but in what form? How can we possibly have a relationship with someone who we don't know what they look like? That's very difficult. What you will do is just go into something of an impersonal conception. It's not impersonal because you believe that he's God. So it's not entirely impersonal. It's not like a Mayavad or something like that. It's called Brahmavad. It's when you believe in the all-pervasive, universal, supreme, cosmic energy, but it doesn't have a principal identity or form. So that's just like Jad Bharat also. He was in that place, Brahma Bhuta Prasanatma Na Sojati Na Kanchati, a place where there's no more suffering, there's no more lamentation, there's no more sorrow. So that place, but there's no real sambandha with the form. So this was the first idea or explanation that Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur is giving. Because if we read through, then when we get to the 10th canto, you can't really avoid the personal aspect of Krishna, but still you might maintain that it's something of an Aishwarya mood, that these moods were only just a pastime, a lila, but his real form is Narayan in Vaikuntha. Many people think, I remember when I used to live here in one house, the family, they would worship some deities that were 350 years old, beautiful form of Radha and Krishna, and they would sing songs about Radha and Krishna, but then when they closed the curtain and they were just wandering around, I would often hear them say, Om Narayana Namaha, Narayana Namaha. They actually had their nishta in Narayana. They actually thought that Narayan was the Supreme Lord. So this is often the case. So in the second explanation, it's describing this Aishwarya aspect. But Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur is including the personal point of showing Krishna's qualities of being most merciful. He's bringing out that quality of mercy, which makes it a very real aspect of Krishna. When you mention the qualities of somebody, then obviously it's a personality. You can't have qualities without having a personality who owns those qualities. And then we also describe the qualities of the Brahman itself. Who remembers what are the qualities of the Brahman? You said before. The qualities of the Brahman: knowledge and renunciation, detachment. Yes, knowledge and renunciation. But those qualities themselves are something of an impersonal flavor. Therefore, the Brahman itself is impersonal. So then that's second explanation. Then the third explanation was Bhakti, Srila Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur was coming straight to the point of Madhurya Ras. That without understanding this Madhurya Ras, then the Bhagavatam really has no fulfillment. It has no complete juice for the heart. So he's saying this is the Satyam Paramatimahi. Now yesterday we were explaining he was going even further than just Madhurya Ras. He was taking it to a very personal level and saying the Satyam Paramahi is Radha and Krishna directly. This is who it is. So we discussed something of the pastimes of Radha and Krishna, particularly in the understanding of this Astakalya Lila. What are the 8 paharas of the day? What are the 8 divisions of the day? All revolving around Radha and Krishna. First of all, Nishanta Lila, then Prata Lila in the early morning hours, and milking the cows, etc. Then Purvana Lila, when Krishna takes the cows out grazing and plays with his cowherd boyfriends. Then Madhyana Lila, then when Krishna is engaging in the most sweet rasa Leelas with his gopis in Radha Kund. So this is one of the longest Leelas, this Madhyana Lila. Then after that is Apurvana Lila, the afternoon Lila when Krishna again rejoins the cowherd boys, again plays so many games with the cowherd, and then returns to Braj, that pastime of Goduli, when he's returning to Braj and the dust has all been raised by the cows covering his body, and they come into the village of Vrindavan. There's a very beautiful reunion with all of the Brijbasis. This is described extensively in so many places in the scripture. So this is about Krishna and Radha. This is Radha and Krishna being the Satyam Paramatimahi. And then there's this Pradosh Lila, where in the evening time all the residents, they go to the house of Shyam Lila, rather. Shyam Lila is when Krishna takes some prasad, he takes a rest. There are so many pastimes there in that Shyam Lila, whereas in the evening time the cows are being milked again, and there's so many beautiful pastimes there. And then is this Pradosh Lila after that, when all the Brijbasis, they go to a central laya, a central place of Qatar, and they listen to so many pastimes of Radha Lila. They listen to stories of Krishna also, and there is singing and dancing and music and so on. This is like their entertainment every evening with Krishna at the center. And then after that, Pradosh Lila, then it's Ratri Lila, then it's the nighttime pastime. So these are 8 Leelas in the day, all describing Radha and Krishna. So these are brought out from the pages of the Bhagavatam. They're alluded to, and the sadhak has to make further inquiry to find out. Now, in this 5th explanation, the Samabodha, the Satyam Paramatimahi, Satyam Paramatimahi, is being described as the devotion that the sadhak inspires in his heart for Radha and Krishna, for Madhurya Bhava, for even that Aishwarya Lord, for even the Brahman. That devotion, what is devotion? What is Bhakti? So Bhakti is the explanation that Srila Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur gives, is the Satyam Paramatimahi. So I'll read some of this explanation from his Sa'artha Darshani in the 5th explanation. Let us meditate on the most beneficial spiritual process which is beyond the gunas, which brings about the appearance of the Lord as Bhagavan. So it's beyond this world, it's in transcendence. So this Bhagavatam has the power to take us to that place of transcendence. If we give it proper honor through our whole lives, don't be thinking, oh, I have to quickly read this, make a study of this quickly, then I will know everything. It's a dynamic scripture, and it will be with us for our whole life, for the entirety of our life. Always, every day, we should touch some verse of this Bhagavatam, even physically putting our hand on the Bhagavatam has great benefit. Certainly we should have it in our home. Which brings about the appearance of Lord Bhagavan, and by which there is realization of Brahman and Paramatma in the process of Gyan and Yoga, which is complete knowledge, independent of other processes, which is revealed by Narad to Vyas, by which is bewildering to even great sages, which is not mixed with the three gunas, and which defeats its opponents by its very nature, by giving direct experience of bliss. So Bhagavan, Paramatma, and Brahman, these three realizations have been explained throughout the pages of the Bhagavatam. Very clear. There's no other body of literature in existence that will have the same result on our hearts, on purifying ourselves. The process of bhakti is indicated in scriptures as the abhideya. So that's in the 11th canto, and I describe what is the essential quality of that abhideya. It's to teach us detachment from this material world. Not only detachment from the material world is going to connect us to that transcendental place, but it's attraction to Krishna. The attraction to Krishna comes first in the 10th canto. All the different stories of Braj. That's creating an attraction. Now, how to reach that person is described in the 11th canto. It's a science. It's a total, absolute science. By which the Ashraya, Krishna, can be attained. It brings about the highest realization and attracts even Krishna. Krishna himself is attracted by himself, by his beauty, by his sweetness, just like the story in the Adi-lila chapter 4, where he sees his reflection in a column, in a jeweled column, and he's thinking, this is the most beautiful person I've ever seen in my life. And he wants to befriend that person, give a sweet to that person, put his arm around that person. So Krishna is so attracted by his own attractive features. Why not? We think, oh, that's just ego, and that's because of our conditioned natures. You know, sometimes we don't see the beauty in ourselves. Sometimes we take a stick and we beat ourselves. We're not appreciating the beauty within our own hearts. Our own hearts are fully spiritual. Our own hearts are glorious. We should also appreciate the beauty within each other. First of all within ourselves, and then very easily within each other. That bhakti which becomes the prayojan prem. That bhakti which becomes the prayojan prem. This bhakti yoga should also be considered as the subject of this verse, because that's the first verse he's talking about. Janmadhyasyayato avyad. Because of this, another meaning is included as the essential theme of this verse. Thus it is said in the 12th canto, words that do not describe the transcendental Lord, but instead deal with temporary matters, are simply false, harsh, and useless. Only those words that manifest the transcendental qualities of the Lord are actually truthful, auspicious, and pure. Those words describing the glories of the all-famous Lord are attractive, relishable, and ever fresh. They are a perpetual festival for the mind. A festival for the mind. And they dry up the ocean of misery. The ocean of misery is caused by our separation from Krishna. And that ocean of misery is manifested by our relentless desire to try and exploit matter for our material body and material senses. So as soon as we realize that essential truth, then we're well on our path to understanding what it is to be a devotee. If we have friendships with non-devotees, they lack this quality, so we can never really associate with them because they have so much faith in the material reality. Devotees ultimately don't have faith in anything that is material at all. Taking bhakti as the subject of this verse, param, the best, then means beyond the three gunas, because you might be reading this and be thinking that it's actually captured by the three gunas. But now, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur is saying, no, the Satyam Paramatimahi is beyond the gunas, since bhakti is another form of the real substance. So that devotion itself is a tangible quality. It's a reality, it's a personality, Bhakti Devi. Satyam refers to Bhakti Yoga, which is full of the most auspicious qualities, beneficial for spiritual practitioners. Satyam Paramatimahi then means, let us meditate on transcendental Bhakti Yoga. It is filled with the qualities of Bhakti Yoga, which is beyond the gunas. So now he quotes many verses to describe this Bhakti. And there's also a very wonderful pastime in the Bhagavatam that describes very clearly this Bhakti Yoga. When Sukadeva Goswami, in the 5th canto, he's explaining to Parikshit Maharaj about the hellish planets. There's a description very clearly about what happens if you do this, this will happen, etc. And very, very graphic indeed. And it's very helpful for us to understand what is in store for those poor suffering jivas who have not accessed this incredible philosophy, this incredible understanding of who is the Supreme Lord. So this will imbue our hearts with compassion, which is what happened to Parikshit Maharaj. He was imbued with compassion, and he was saying, so how can one take precaution not to fall into those hellish planets? And then Parikshit Maharaj, and then Sukadeva Goswami begins to explain him that the path of atonement, this path called Nivritti Marg, this path of atoning for our sins, like if you murdered or killed a cow, etc., then you should go and fast for so many days before yajnas, giving charity, etc., etc. You can do so many things to relieve yourself of that sinful reaction. So he's speaking to Parikshit Maharaj, and Parikshit Maharaj says, no, I don't actually accept this as being the real truth, the absolute truth, because it's not getting to the root, it's not purifying the root. The root is ignorance. This is why someone will sin. So if you just purify, it's like in allopathic medicine. They just look at the external symptoms. They don't inquire about what is the cause of the symptom. The cause of a sinful activity is ignorance. This is the cause. So unless the root is addressed, which is ignorance, then the symptoms will come back again at another time. So Parikshit Maharaj rejects this. So then Sukadeva Goswami begins to explain the path of Gyan Kand. Gyan Kand means the path of like austerity, tapasya, celibacy, so much worship in the temple, for example. So many pious activities, or the study of the Vedic scriptures even. This all falls in the category of Gyan Kand. I am trying to accumulate knowledge to purify my ignorance. But even as he's explaining this to Parikshit Maharaj in his mind is rejecting this. This is not actually coming to the root. It's not actually curing the entire ignorance from the heart. Unless the heart is developing some real attraction for that supreme transcendence, then again, this is simply a diversion. It's not going to carry us through. If we study so much, but we don't get the understanding of our relationship with Krishna through Guru, if we're not getting that, there are many millions and billions of jnanis in the world. They know so much philosophy, but have they actually got Shuddha Bhakti? Is it pure Bhakti that they're actually getting? So even before Parikshit Maharaj objects to this, then Shukadeva stops speaking, and then he says actually that Bhakti Devi herself is the only cure for those jivas suffering in the material illusion. Is it too loud? You're fixing it. Okay, so he's describing like that only Bhakti Devi, which is the topic of what we're discussing today, that Bhakti Devi, and it's described that this subject matter of Bhakti Devi is described in the 6th topic of the Bhagavatam itself. The topic in Bhagavatam we've described already has this Atra Shargo, Vishargas Cha, Stanam, Poshanam, Utaya. Actually, it's the fourth topic, this Poshana. Poshana means the mercy of the Lord to his devotees. It's glorifying his devotees. So this pastime is glorifying Bhakti Devi herself. So then he begins a very ancient history of Ajamil. This history of Ajamil is actually told to Shukadev Goswami by Agastya Rishi many thousands and thousands of years ago. And then he begins to explain that there was a person called Ajamil who was residing in Kanyakupuja. Kanyakupuja. Yeah, that's the name. Kanyakubja. My pronunciation, Sanskrit is not, I'm not so familiar with the language of Sanskrit. So Kanyakubja was the town where Ajamil stayed. And Ajamil is described, was born in a Brahmin family, and he was, as a child, very pure in his consciousness, and he would follow diligently the orders of his Brahminical parents. And he was developing all the qualities of a Brahmana. He was developing satyam, he was developing truthfulness and honesty and so on. And then one day, his father requested him to go to the forest and to pick some flowers and some kusha grass and some durva grass and bring it back and find some fruits for the worship of the deity. So on the way to the forest, he saw a drunken Sudra who was embracing an also drunken prostitute. And the prostitute's garments were loose on her body, it's described. So Ajamil, witnessing this lusty activity on the roadside, was very much pierced in his heart by a mood of lusty desires which had previously been dormant in his heart. And then he goes to the forest, and it's described that he's trying to utilize the Shastras to purify his consciousness away from this lust. And this is just like I described, that the Gyan itself is not going to cure the heart. It's an attraction to Krishna. It's that bhakti, which is the only quality that's ultimately going to purify the heart. If you feel natural attraction to Jamuna Devi, to Vrindavan, to Radharaman, to the different deities, to the different personalities of the Dham, that's the place where we're trying to grow. We're trying to grow in that natural place of attraction to Krishna, not just in the mind's assimilation of Gyan, etc. Gyan must be there to understand the truth and reality, but at the same time, unless Bhakti Devi is making her appearance in our natural attraction, then it's going to be without benefit ultimately, just like with Ajamil. Because Bhakti hadn't manifested fully in his heart. He had some understanding of Brahminical behavior, etc., and good qualities. So he was trying without the help of Guru. At this time, it's very important to understand that he didn't have, it's not described, that he had a Guru who was instructing him. More than likely, it's exactly the same in so many Brijbasis homes, that they have a family Guru. But that family Guru is perhaps not, well versed in knowledge of all the scriptures, particularly the Bhakti Shastras. So he wasn't getting any direction from any guru. So he tried very hard to fight this lusty desire, but he failed. And when his father died and left the planet, he engaged that same prostitute as a maidservant in his house. And he had already become married to a Brahmani, a qualified Brahmin girl. But then his attraction was always dwelling on this prostitute. And finally, he sent that Brahmani away. And then he just lived with that prostitute. And he wasn't taking care of his mother at that time, or his father previously, because he was so attracted to the prostitute. And then, finally his parents died, and he squandered all of his inheritance on satisfying the lusty desires of that prostitute. And when all that inheritance ran out, then he was very busy just robbing and cheating people to get money to satisfy that prostitute. And he had 10 sons by that prostitute. And it's described that at the advanced age of 86, he even had one small child who, due to his previous sanskars, he gave the name Narayan. So in his old age, when his mind was becoming unstable, he was taking shelter of this little son, just like old people do. And he was calling that son Narayan. He was eating with the son, he was walking with the son, sitting with the son. He was with him all day long, this youngest son of 10 sons. And because he kept calling Narayan, 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 it's described by our acharyas that from the first name of our Narayan, it was purifying all of his previous countless sins that he'd committed. But he wasn't making any offenses. We must be very sure on what is the difference between an offense and a sin. Do you understand, Indira, what is the difference between an offense and a sin? What is a sin?
Sin might be an activity that is not allowed, that is forbidden.
Correct.
And then an offense might be something that...
Don't say might, say it is.
Is something that...
Don't commit the offense of uncertainty. It's actually an offense. It's a fault to be uncertain. In that Yogamaya book I was reading, it's a fault to be uncertain. So we should be sure. That's why we should study. So a sin, Indira is explaining, is something that is against the principles of actually material or social life. If you go and kill somebody, if you hurt somebody, this is a sin. If you cheat somebody, if you lie to somebody, these are sins. But what is an aparad is far more, thousands and millions of times more serious to the sadhak. The result of the sin is that you will get a material reaction. But the result of an aparad is that your subtle body will suffer. Your mind will be drifted away from Krishna. It'll go away from anything pure and of value. So the result of an aparad is so much more dangerous than the result of a sin. An aparad is something that is offensive towards the deity, offensive towards the Vaishnavas, offensive towards the name, offensive towards the holy Dham. These are offenses. These will create aparads that can really impede our devotional practice. But a sinful activity, for example, if someone is trying to practice and they're breaking the principle of smoking cigarettes, it's not the end of the world. Or drinking tea. It's not the end of the world. Gurudev said one time, is it better to smoke a cigarette or be angry with someone? Think about it. What is better? Smoking a cigarette is only hurting yourself, but anger is putting some very negative vibe into the atmosphere, and perhaps you're angry even with a devotee, and that is a lot worse. So we should understand clearly the differences between what is a sin, and there are different reactions, of course. So Ajamil, he wasn't committing any aparad, and the first utterance of the name Narayan relieved him from all of his sins. That's how powerful is the name of Krishna, the name of Narayan. So he was always calling his young child Narayan. Then finally, his life span ran out, and he was on the point of leaving his body. And he saw these 3 Yamadutas coming to take his soul. These Yamadutas are described as hideous personalities. Their hair is standing erect, their faces and bodies are deformed, their nails are long, they look very aggressive. Sometimes actually they come with dogs. And this is a truth. There have been many stories we can hear from devotees of their parents telling them about this vision that they're seeing. And, you know, they've seen dogs coming. So these Yamadutas, they came to take the soul of Arjamil for retribution, for purification, because of his sins. And as they had this Pashunaga, this rope around his neck, and they were pulling the soul from the heart, all of a sudden, Arjamil, he realized that he was dying, and in his traumatized fear, all he knew was to call out to his son. He started to call out to Narayan, 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 like, Narayan, save me. He was crying with all of his heart to Narayan to save him. And at this time, the Yamadutas, the Vishnudutas immediately appeared, these 4 effulgent golden people. And they immediately chastised the Yamadutas and told them to stop doing what they were doing. The Yamadutas, they were looking and they inquired, well, who are you 4 glorious persons? And they began to describe in the descriptions here in the Bhagavatam of how beautiful their helmets were, how effulgent were their jewels, how radiant were their faces, how powerful were their effulgences. And they were glorifying the beauty of these Vishnudutas. The Vishnudutas, they cut that rope. And then the Yamadutas were feeling very angry that their Lord Yamaraj, his service to Lord Yamaraj had been stopped, obstructed. Who were these people? And they inquired who they were. And then these personalities is described with voices like thunder, rumbling thunder. So beautiful voices said that they didn't express their identities, but instead they questioned the Yamadutas. They said, oh, if you are acting on behalf of religion, then please explain the principles of religion. Why do you think this person is eligible to be condemned in hell? And then the Yamadutas, for many verses, begin to explain what is religion. They explain. I'll read from my notes. That Arjamil had not performed any atonement to offset all the irreligious acts that he had performed, like stealing, lying, robbing, murdering, all of these vicious acts that he performed no atonement. So the Yamadutas were explaining like this. And then, after their explanation, the Vishnudutas, they said, oh, how unfortunate that battery's run out. Doesn't matter. How unfortunate that you're posing yourself as authorities in religion, and yet you don't know the precepts of real religion. You don't know the glories of the holy name of the Lord. This is what they were telling the Yamadutas. You don't know that Arjamil has not only atoned for the sins of this birth, but for millions of previous births, simply by chanting this holy name with such desperation at the time of death. All of his previous sins have been purified. He was only allowed to call the Vishnudutas because he hadn't made any sort of aparad. We should understand this very clearly. The second chanting of his name is called Nam Abbas. It's not Nam Aparad. So that's why the Vishnudutas appeared. Don't think that, oh, it's so easy just at the time of death, just call out Krishna, Krishna. But actually, how many offenses have we committed prior to that to devotees, to holy places, etc.? We have to be very careful for this. But they're explaining, the Yamadutas are then explaining, they're saying that only those who are completely devoted to... No, that was something else, sorry. I just want to explain it all to you completely, properly. So also, the Yamadutas, they've been explaining, as I explained to you yesterday, there are these 13 witnesses that are writing down every single activity we've made in this birth. And they can see from that list the amount of sins that need to be purified. And are those persons eligible to go to hell to have those sins purified? And I described yesterday those 13 witnesses: the sun, the moon, fire, water, air, day, night, evening, the directions, super soul. Did I say moon? Moon. I'll read it from here. Sun, fire, sky. I didn't say that. Sky. Day, night, directions, water, land, air, demigods, moon, evening, and supersoul. Those are 13 witnesses that are always with us, recording every single activity the jiva performs. And if those activities are extremely sinful, then it's the cue for the Yamadutas to appear and rectify those sins. Of course, we understand from a transcendental point of view that this is Krishna's loving way of purifying the jiva. Just like a mother will lovingly slap and chastise her child, unless the child is strongly rectified in its youth, then when it gets older, it's going to become a dacoit and be very sinful. Just like Mother Yasoda was thinking the same thing. If I don't bind my child, if I don't take some firm, strong action, my child will grow up like a spoiled brat and then, be totally self-centered when he grows older and be uncontrollable and get himself in all kinds of trouble and be very unhappy. So, like this, it's a punishment by Krishna to purify us. We have a sanskar of that. All of us, we have a sanskar. We all must have been in hell at some point in time, unless you've descended from another world altogether. But we've all been through that chastisement in hell to teach us the reality and beauty, actually, ultimately, of Krishna's kindness. So the Vishnudutas, they're chastising them, saying that they don't know the precepts of real religious life, which is to be developing our attraction to Krishna, which is what Ajamil did and demonstrated through the chanting. The Vishnudutas, they also explain, beautiful verse, Namno hi yavati shakti papo niharane hara taravat kartu na shaknoti patakam patakina raha. That this holy name has the strength to purify more desires than we are even able to have. Can you imagine how many desires we have in our hearts? But the holy name is able to purify even more desires than we have. It's got that much power. So this holy name, this glorification of Krishna, is non-different to Krishna himself. That's why it's so powerful. And by this method of chanting Hare Krishna, we can cross over lifetimes of sinful actions, sinful reactions, and be inspired to perform pure devotional service to Radha and Krishna. So after this conversation between the Yamadutas and the Vishnudutas had taken place, Ajamil is just lying there like in a coma, and he's seeing the Yamadutas and Vishnudutas discussing his situation, and he's hearing what are religious principles, and all his previous sanskars from his childhood have arisen, and he's realizing the purity of devotional service. And as soon as those Yamadutas have been dismissed by the Vishnudutas, then he starts to offer prayers to the Vishnudutas. And then as soon as he tries to speak, immediately the Vishnudutas, they disappear. And then Ajamil, he comes into wakeful consciousness, and then he realizes his predicament, how he's been bound in this household life, governed by this prostitute to be made like a dancing dog at her every whim. And then immediately the knot of material attachment has been cut by his association with the Vishnu Dutas. It's described the Vishnu Dutas are acting as guru. This is the Siddhanta of this pastime. The Vishnu Dutas are acting as guru and creating a mood of detachment coming in his heart. Then as soon as he comes to consciousness, immediately, not looking anywhere, left or right, up and down, not looking towards his little son or anywhere, not having to say goodbye or anything, he's realizing his dangerous situation and immediately departs for Haridwar, where he finds a Vishnu temple and takes shelter there and begins meditating on those four personalities that he saw in his trance, like when he was supposed to leave his body. And then he begins to glorify the name of Narayan. And then he's sitting in the Vishnu temple, and then gradually, all of these truths become revealed in his heart, and he becomes knowledgeable. And at that time, again, the Vishnu Dutas, those same personalities, it's saying very definitely in the script, in the pastime, in the Shastra, that it's the same personalities. So it means that these personalities are not just abstract, any old Vishnu Dutas. These are all individual personalities. They all have their own individual natures. And those same individual personalities appear to him again, and then they put him onto a chariot and a spaceship and take him to Vaikuntha Dham because of his purification by utterance of the holy name. But this is demonstrating the power of Bhakti Devi over the material power of Gyan Kanda, for example. So the Satyam Paramadhimahi described by Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur in this verse is Bhakti Devi. And then there's further to the pastime that the Yamadutas had become so despondent because they felt that their service had been obstructed by the Vishnu Dutas. They went running back to Yamaraj, and it's described that they were in a mood ready to commit suicide unless Yamaraj pacified them. They were dedicated servants of Yamaraj. That was their service, and they had understood that Yamaraj was that supreme Lord. And now they had suddenly found out that perhaps he wasn't. So unless Yamaraj could actually pacify their doubts, they were thinking that they would just leave their bodies. Their life had no value. So then Yamaraj, when they went into the court of Yamaraj and they mentioned the name Narayan, they said these four Vishnu Dutas, they've said that because Ajamil, who was such a sinful wretch, leaving his good Brahmin wife and neglecting his parents, doing every sin in the world, engaging with a prostitute, no proper purificatory process, nothing. But because he said this name Narayan, and when the Yamadutas said this name Narayan in the court of Yamaraj in hell, Yamaraj became so happy. Oh, you have uttered the name of my Lord in this dark, hellish place. This is very wonderful. And then Yamaraj became very happy, actually, by their inquiry, and then explained to these Yamadutas that higher than Lord Brahma, higher than himself, higher than Lord Brahma is Lord Vishnu, Lord Narayan. And if you utter his name, he explained to them what are the precepts of devotional service. And then from this conversation and these teachings, all the other Yamadutas came to understand that anyone who is vibrating or chanting the holy name of the Lord is not eligible to be taken to Yamaraj's abode. And now, today, if the Yamadutas even smell, even scent the atmosphere of the holy name of the Lord on a soul, they go far away from that person. They'll never come in contact with that person. So we're safe from the Yamadutas, but it doesn't mean that we're not going to take another birth necessarily in a human form, but we probably won't go to hell if we're chanting Hare Krishna at the time of death. So we have to be very cautious for that. Without offenses, absolutely. Absolutely. So being in the proximity of living with devotees, how many extra offenses do we actually commit?
Could you actually say, conclude from that?
It's better not to be in the association of devotees, just go away and just, like someone like Lorraine just here, Hare Krishna, stay far away, don't come in contact with the politics, you won't make any offenses.
Like materialists, if they don't know anything about Krishna, the Dham, the holy name, they
Absolutely.
So
They're going to suffer for their sins.
Because we become devotees and politics and everything, and it's so easy to make offenses everywhere.
Yes.
But then we don't make it because we make offenses and
Yes.
it's even worse. So
We don't know that we're not going to make it. We don't know that we're not going to make it. She's saying that for those people who are non-devotees and they don't know anything at all about Krishna, it's probably better off to remain that way than take the risk of committing aparad. But without the risk, you're not going to go back to Godhead either. So which one do you want? Do you want to try and follow the pure path with the risk of committing aparad and suffering deeply? Do we want to take that risk for the summum bonum of life? I would say, if I was personally asked, I would definitely say yes, I'll take the risk. But the risk, if we understand this, then every day we should be cautioning our mind and activities not to be committing aparad. Krishna will forgive us very quickly, because there's one big point that I missed out of this whole pastime that we should consider deeply, very deeply, that when Ajamil comes back to material consciousness, what is his first mood? His first mood is the deepest regret and remorse for all of the sins that he's committed. And this is the medicine for the heart's disease. It's remorse and regret for the sins that I have committed that is going to cure the disease of the heart. Fie on me, I have been so sinful for so many millions of births. This will create a humble state of consciousness. It's in that humble state of consciousness that I'm eligible for Krishna. Even now, we should be understanding as devotees how many... Bhativedanta Thakur saying in one song, he says, please forgive me for the numbers of sins that I have committed in thousands and thousands of births, thousands and thousands of times. Not only one time I've committed a sin, but thousands of times. So we're begging forgiveness deeply for that. So this remorse, even just recently, Srila Bhakti Bharati Maharaj, he said about one devotee's fall down, that the only cure for that is remorse and regret. Is to show remorse and regret for my, bad activity, for my, not sinful activity, my offensive activity that I've committed. So we should understand, we're told from the very beginning that devotional service is like a razor's edge. One slip and you can cut yourself. So it's the onus of the devotee to become responsible to knowing what are the offenses to Dham, what are the 10 offenses to Nam. The first offense to Holy Nam is to not blaspheme those devotees who have taken up chanting. How does it go exactly? Not to blaspheme the devotees who have dedicated their lives to honor the holy name of the Lord. This is the first offense. And then even the 10th offense, that after hearing so many topics about this subject matter, I still have not developed detachment from this world. That's considered an offense. I'm still attached to things of this world, even though I'm hearing so many other truths. Krishna won't let us get away easily. He wants us back. He wants us. That means the full quid. That means we have to be right on it. There's no compromise here. It's just like in nature, there's no compromise. When a hurricane comes through, it smashes everything. Baby birds, baby lambs, everything is smashed. It's relentless. And also, Krishna is like that because the actual truth packet is so sublime. It's so powerful. It's so wonderful. We want that. We want that full truth. That full truth is to be inspired towards the path of pure bhakti. Bhakti Devi. This is the whole summum bonum of all the Srimad Bhagavatam, is to try and inspire us for this. What is bhakti? It's that attraction to Krishna, attraction to Radha and Krishna through seva. How can I become attracted to Radha and Krishna? I haven't seen Radha and Krishna. I don't know who they are. How can I serve them? Because we've seen Guru. We've seen Guru's qualities. We've seen Guru's potencies. He's acted directly in our subtle body, coming from Supersoul. We were describing yesterday how it's Guru who jumps in the heart in place of Supersoul. When we meet Sadguru, then it's Guru sitting there in the heart. So we've had that experience. We've heard so much. The truth is something very wonderful. We inherently sense that. We know that by nature. It's not in the darkness, it's not in the material realm at all. So we're looking to transcendence. So we know that is the truth. We need to come to this place called Paramartik Shraddha. Paramartik Shraddha is not like Lokik Shraddha, not putting my faith in anything worldly. It's completely pure in transcendence. This is where I'm putting my faith, utterly. And then Krishna, from his side, will very quickly reveal that as an absolute reality. All of us have seen examples of confirmation of this truth in our lives. Otherwise, we wouldn't be sitting here. We all have felt the benefits of living in Vrindavan, of being in the association of a Mahabhagavat, of being with the devotees, of being during a beautiful arti or kirtan, hearing discussions on the philosophy, etc. We've all experienced the sweetness and power of that. So we need to build on that to come to this place of Paramartik Shraddha. And that is in the world of Bhakti Devi. So I'm just going to very briefly read again Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's conclusion of these 5 explanations. I've gone into some degree of the steps through the Srimad Bhagavatam. I've described the stairway or the ladder that Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur gave us, that Shamshaya, then Nashtika, and then Nirgun, then Kliva, and then that supreme Purush, and then Mituna, then Swakiya, then Parakiya. These 8 steps that I've described previously that Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati gave within the Bhagavatam. And then I also described the 5 or 6 types of bhaktas. We can also understand what is bhakti from that example. Dhruva Maharaj, Prahlad Maharaj, Ambarish Maharaj, Hanumanji, the 5 Pandavas, and then Uddhava himself. Then what to speak of the consideration of the Brijabasis. So we've seen that line, that link of bhakti. And now we've heard these 5 explanations from Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. So we can put them all together and get a much deeper appreciation for this Bhagavatam. So I'm just going to read this paragraph that I read in the very first day, just to show us what is the conclusion. So he's saying that the first explanation of this first verse of Bhagavatam shows the nature as a light, in other words, the Brahman. The second explanation shows it as the sun. It gives the light form. It's like often we tell the Muslims, because Allah means light, but they don't believe that Allah has a form. They believe it's impersonal. But if you ask them, what is the source of the light? There must be an object to the light, otherwise you can't have light. We've no experience of light without a source, have we? Now it's the sunlight. In the evening time, it's the moonlight, or electric light, etc. So there must be a source to the light. You can't have an abstract light. So in other words, the first explanation is just the light. Then the second explanation is, well, what is the source of that light? That's the all-pervasive, supremely merciful Aishwarya mood of Krishna. That's the second explanation. Then the third explanation is the sweetness of that spiritual realm, the mood of that spiritual realm, which is Madhurya Bhav, Madhurya Rasa. And then the fourth explanation is Radha and Krishna, those personal. Where is that Madhurya coming from? Just like the Brahman was coming from Krishna, so the Madhurya Rasa is coming from Radha and Krishna. So there's 4 explanations, and then the 5th is the devotion inspired by the Jiva himself towards that transcendental reality. So these are very beautiful meditations on this supreme scripture. And we should take these various pastimes. There are so many millions of more explanations we can hear on Srimad Bhagavatam. Actually, if you listen to Madhusudan Maharaj, he's like living in this world of Bhagavatam. When he explains, it's so beautiful, and he can go into all kinds of different explanations and areas. It's a thrill at every moment to hear all these explanations. So I try to give these 5 explanations only in these 7 days we've had together. So this is the last of this series of classes, and I very much hope that you have been inspired to examine this Srimad Bhagavatam yourself, because that's the whole purpose of our meeting together, is to be inspired to take this Bhagavatam seriously and deeply into our hearts forever. It's the ever fresh glorification of the Supreme Lord's Madhurya Ras, Radha and Krishna, and Bhakti Devi herself are all there within the pages of the Bhagavatam. So every day, daily, we should make it a point to taste the amazing magic and sweetness of this Bhagavatam. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Gurudev ki jai, Srila Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur ki jai. Does anyone have a specific question at all? Or should I ask you some?
Question from today, class. You were saying that when the living entity goes to the hellish planets, that's when we get purified and learn what their mistakes were. My question was, when we get a new body, like an animal body,
Do we remember the lessons?
we don't remember what we did, so what's the point then of getting suffering?
She's asking, what is the point of being punished if you don't know why you're being punished? At the time of being punished, you do know why. For example, if you've had a very lusty nature, then you're made to embrace a red-hot molten effigy of a woman or a man. It's like there's a drawing of it. They have ropes sewn into your body, and you're pulled onto this molten hot figure of a man or a woman. That is going to make such an impression somewhere in your mind. Can you imagine? That's Krishna's kind. It's making a stamp deep within your... It's like scientists, for example, tell us that we only use 1/10 of our brain. What is in the rest of the brain? It's these impressions of being embracing this molten hot figure, of a man or a woman. Those impressions are indelibly there, like in the hard drive of the computer. They're there. So somewhere in our nature we actually know. And at particular moments of our lives, perhaps great fear will arise as we go to perhaps kill somebody. We might think, oh my God, I did this before and look what happened last time. Something flavor of that might rise in the mind. So Krishna's world is perfect. This punishment is obviously going to teach us something. But more than this, Pandita, even knowing of these punishments should teach us something. Even knowledge of this world. That means if we have read the Srimad Bhagavatam, if we are aware that those punishments will exist for the sinful jivas, it will create 2 things. 1, great caution in ourselves committing sinful activities, and 2, great compassion for those jivas who don't know what awaits them. If they're killing cows or animals, etc., what sort of punishment will await them? They'll be cooked in oil, alive.
But once we get the body of an animal, like the monkeys or pigs, when we're in that body we don't remember.
But we suffer like hell in those bodies. In those bodies, Pandita, in those bodies, we have to appreciate there's no karma. There's no karma at all for the animal body.
No, they're living out their karma of suffering in their body. So how
But they don't incur karma, or they don't... no karma is... They're living... The animal itself is its karma for its previous births. Only in the human form do we incur good or bad karma. So the animal, he's in a sense freed from karma. He's just suffering the result of his karma in that animal birth. So you're saying he doesn't know why he's suffering there.
No, you suffer in hell and then you suffer also.
Perhaps in an animal, yeah.
Yeah, but as an animal, you have the consciousness to learn to know why you're suffering.
No.
You don't learn anything.
Animals, even if you sat one animal in here for 7 days and spoke the Bhagavan to him too, and he's sitting under the watchful eyes of Radha Gopinath, as soon as he gets on the street, he's going to chase a bitch. He's not going to be, they don't have the capacity. They may be able to be trained in all kinds of ways, but their animalistic nature is not going to change. That animalistic nature is like, in part of it. I think I understand what you're asking, that, is it just in a sense?
No,
It seems like...
What's the use getting animal bodies or low bodies as a punishment for sins we have occurred, if while we're in that body we don't even know what sins, how do we learn? Yes, how do we learn?
It's like being an ignorant person in jail. There are such people in jail, and actually they did a survey, Pandita. This probably answers the question to some degree. They did a survey in the Newsweek magazine, and they went and asked something like 250,000 prisoners why they were in jail. And out of that, only 2% said it was their fault. The other 98% all said it wasn't their faults. Their mother didn't bring them up properly, it was bad association, this guy just put this knife in my hand and I just did it. It was like they had not. So they're in the jail, they're in the animal's body, and they still don't think it's their fault. How are they going to learn? But it's also described in the Jivadharma in the 16th chapter, how the jiva, he goes through all these myriad of bodies to experience that particular form of life and to realize, the futility of conditioned life. He's actually, what we should understand most is that we are in these human bodies, and what's that verse? I haven't been chanting verses lately, so they slip away, but I have to. I'm answering your question, don't worry, I'm not going away from it. But I want to, it bothers me if I lose this. But there's the verse saying that for so many births, Labda sudulavam idam bahu sambhavante manusyam aratadama nityam api hadira turanam yateta napadet yanu nishresya vishaya kalo sarvatasyat. Just as I'm chanting this, Pujapad Padmanabha Maharaj comes in. So yes, so after suffering condition in so many species, then we become eligible for a human birth. And in that human birth, we can understand all these things. So in time, we will understand. Maybe we don't consciously understand in the animal body, but in time, we will understand. I think that is the answer to your question. Really. But we should know the difference between sin and aparad, between karma in an animal species and human species, and the principles of bhakti, which is what we've been discussing. Okay. Yes, I know. Go for it.
Yeah, if we commit a sin and we still know, or offense, and we still know that we are going to get a result, and we still do it,
Then we're crazy.
yeah, we went crazy. We are
It's like the criminal, you know. He knows that he's going to go to jail, and he's even been in jail. But he goes and does it again and again and again. Why? Because he's stupid.
It's a lack of intelligence.
Lack of intelligence, yeah.
But doesn't it ignoring the voice of Super Soul? Like, you know, when we know something's wrong, doesn't
Yes.
it show that
Yes.
it make us less sensitive? And
Yes. We're just turning our back again. It's like we're in this tatashta.
And it's also for us.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
So I think
Maharaj, we're just about to wind up.
It's okay. Even 1 minute. Even 1 minute of
so
Bhagavatam.
a sin might not be an offense, but an offense is a sin.
It depends what the activity is, doesn't it?
Well, yeah, it depends. So a sin might not be an offense, but an offense is a sin as well.
Not necessarily. I might be very rude to Padmanabha Maharaj, and that's a great offense, but it might not be a sin socially or anything like that. You know,
Okay.
they're not going to take me out and reprimand me because I said an angry word.